Chosen one, listen carefully. I have an urgent and deeply important message to share today, and I need to be very clear from the beginning. This message is not for everyone. If you are not walking the divine path of God, if you are here only out of curiosity, this message will not resonate with you. But if you are a true follower of Christ, if your heart has been seeking truth, clarity and purpose, then this message was meant for you, and it has reached you at the exact right moment. You did not find this video by accident. Heaven allowed this message to cross your path because you are ready to hear it now. What you are about to understand will reframe everything you have been through. Chosen one, you passed the final test, even though you didn't know you were being tested. And God's reaction to your faithfulness is far greater than you imagined, so powerful it may leave you stunned. Stay with me till the very end, because what I'm going to reveal will bring peace to your mind, clarity to your spirit, and confirmation to your soul. Before we continue, chosen ones, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, and share this message with other chosen ones so they can receive this revelation as well. And comment 777 in the comments to declare that you are aligned with God's timing and the divine path set before you. Section 2, the final test you didn't know you were taking. Chosen one, I want you to breathe for a moment and listen closely, because what I'm about to explain will settle something deep inside your mind. The season you just came out of was not random. It was not chaos. It was not punishment. It was the final test. And the reason it confused you so much is because God never announces his most important exams. God does not send a warning email before the test begins. He does not sit you down and say, "Now I will measure your faith, your obedience, your endurance." Instead, he hides the test inside everyday life, inside silence, inside delay, inside unanswered prayers, inside moments where you did everything right, yet nothing seemed to move. You were being tested in ways you didn't recognize. That's why it felt so heavy. The final test is never about how loudly you worship when things are going well. It is about how you carry yourself when heaven feels quiet. It is about whether you still choose integrity when no one is watching, whether you still choose kindness when you are misunderstood, whether you still choose obedience when obedience brings no immediate reward. Many people fail this test because they grow bitter. Others fail because they start performing for validation. Some fail because they abandon their values just to escape discomfort. But you, chosen one, you stayed steady. Even when you questioned, even when you felt tired, even when you didn't fully understand what God was doing. Let me tell you something important. The final test is designed to strip you of external motivation. God removes applause. He removes reassurance. He removes visible progress. And then he watches one thing only: your heart posture. Did you still pray when prayer felt empty? Did you still show compassion when you were hurting? Did you still resist becoming hardened by what you went through? Did you refuse to become something ugly just because life treated you unfairly? That was the test. You thought the test was about endurance, but it was about alignment. You thought it was about surviving pain, but it was about preserving your spirit. God was not checking how strong you were. He was checking how surrendered you were. And here is why this matters so much. God only gives final tests to those who are close to transition. He does not invest this level of refinement into people he plans to leave where they are. The intensity of what you went through was not a sign of abandonment. It was a sign of elevation. There were moments you wanted answers, moments you wanted clarity, moments you begged God to just explain himself, but he stayed silent. Not because he was absent, but because silence reveals maturity. God already knew what was inside you. The silence was for you to find out. The final test often looks like unfairness. People misjudging you, being overlooked, watching others advance while you stay still, doing the inner work while nobody notices. And the temptation is always the same: to compromise, to rush, to abandon your values just to feel relief. But you didn't. Even when you felt discouraged, you didn't become destructive. Even when you felt lonely, you didn't lose your compassion. Even when your faith felt quiet, it never disappeared. That's why heaven marked you as past. You see, God is not impressed by perfection. He is moved by consistency. He is not looking for people who never struggle. He is looking for people who don't change their character under pressure. That season tested whether you would let pain redefine you, whether disappointment would harden your heart, whether delay would turn you resentful. And even when you had questions, you never fully walked away from God. You wrestled, but you stayed, and that matters more than you realize. This is why you felt like everything was happening internally. The final test is mostly invisible. It happens in thoughts, reactions, private decisions. It happens in moments where no one would blame you for giving up, yet you didn't. And here's the part that will bring you peace. You were not expected to feel strong the whole time. Feeling tired did not mean you were failing. Feeling confused did not mean you were off track. God was not grading your emotions. He was observing your direction. You kept choosing light over darkness, integrity over shortcuts, faith over bitterness, even when it cost you comfort. That's why the test ended quietly. No announcement, no dramatic moment. Just a subtle shift inside you. A calm you didn't have before. A detachment from chaos. A deeper discernment. Those are signs of passing. Chosen one, you didn't miss anything. You didn't fail anything. The test is over. And the fact that you're still here, still listening, still open, still seeking God, is proof that heaven already recorded your result. And now that you understand what that season really was, your mind can finally rest. Because the struggle was not pointless, it was purposeful. And what comes next will make sense only because of what you survived. Stay with me, because now we need to talk about something just as important. Why God had to remove so much from your life right before this moment. Section 3. Why God had to remove everything and everyone. Chosen one, this part may touch a tender place in your heart, but I want you to stay with me. What you experienced was not abandonment, it was alignment. God did not remove people and things from your life to hurt you. He removed them because they could not follow you into what He was preparing next. Here is a truth many people struggle to accept. God never promotes someone while they are still surrounded by what would contaminate the next level. Before elevation, there is always separation, and separation is rarely gentle. It feels confusing, it feels unfair, it feels lonely, but it is necessary. You noticed it, didn't you? People who once felt close suddenly drifted away. Conversations changed, support disappeared, some left without explanation, others stayed physically present but emotionally distant. And you kept asking God, why? Why now? Why all at once? Why does it feel like everything familiar is being stripped away? Because God was answering a prayer you prayed a long time ago. A prayer for growth, a prayer for purpose, a prayer for clarity. And the answer to that prayer required space. God removes what cannot survive the next season. Not because it is evil, but because it is incompatible. Some people were connected to your comfort, not your calling. Some were attached to who you were, not who you are becoming. And if God allowed them to stay, you would have shrunk to keep them comfortable. Chosen one, you were outgrowing environments quietly, and heaven stepped in before you compromised your assignment. Let me speak plainly. Not everyone who walked with you was meant to walk ahead of you. Some were seasonal, some were lessons, some were mirrors showing you what you needed to heal. And when their role was complete, God closed the chapter. You didn't imagine it. You didn't overreact. The shift was real. The most painful part is that God rarely explains removals while they are happening. He lets you feel the loss first, because loss exposes attachment. And attachment, when misplaced, can delay destiny. You see, chosen one, God is very protective over what He places inside you. When He sees that certain relationships drain you, distract you, or distort your identity, He intervenes. Not loudly, not forcefully, but decisively. That is why some people left when you needed them most. It was not because you were unworthy of support. It was because God was teaching you self-leadership. He was teaching you how to lean on Him, not on people who could not carry your weight. And yes, it hurt. It hurt deeply, because you loved genuinely. You gave sincerely. You stayed loyal. And still, you were the one left standing alone. But hear me carefully. Loneliness was not the goal. Clarity was. In isolation, God retrains your discernment. When distractions fade, you start hearing more clearly. When noise leaves, truth becomes louder. When people stop influencing your decisions, God finally has your full attention. That season was not about punishment. It was about detox. You were detoxing from emotional dependence, detoxing from external validation, detoxing from environments that normalized your struggle but never supported your growth. And detox never feels good while it's happening. Chosen one, you didn't lose your people. You lost what was blocking your peace. There were moments you questioned yourself, moments you wondered if you were the problem, moments you replayed conversations in your mind, asking what you did wrong. But let me relieve you of that burden. Growth will always offend comfort. Elevation will always expose incompatibility. God had to remove certain voices so you could finally hear your own. He had to remove certain attachments so you could stand without leaning. He had to remove certain patterns so you could walk freely into what He prepared. And here is something most people never realize. God often removes people right before blessing because blessings reveal character. If the wrong people stayed, they would either misuse your blessing, resent your growth, or sabotage your peace. God protects you from future pain by allowing present discomfort. Think about it. Had they stayed, you would have carried guilt for growing. You would have dimmed your light. You would have delayed obedience just to keep the peace. And God refuses to let His chosen ones self-betray for the sake of familiarity. So He intervened. And what felt like loss was actually mercy. Another reason God removes everything at once is because partial separation creates confusion. God is not interested in half-healed hearts. He wants you fully present, fully aware, fully aligned. That requires a clean break. Chosen one, this is why the season felt empty. Not because God left you empty, but because He was clearing room. You cannot receive what is next while still holding what is finished. And I know, some nights felt heavy. Some mornings felt directionless. You kept going, but you didn't know where you were going. That's because transition seasons don't come with maps. They come with trust. You were learning how to walk without emotional crutches, how to trust God without signs, how to stand firm without reassurance. And that is not weakness. That is maturity. Let me tell you something powerful. The version of you that enters the next season cannot be the version that needed constant confirmation. God was shaping someone steady, someone grounded, someone discerning. That's why you started craving peace more than excitement. That's why chaos stopped feeling attractive. That's why certain conversations began to feel draining instead of entertaining. Those are signs of growth. You didn't become cold, you became clear. And clarity sometimes costs relationships. Chosen one, if God had not removed what He removed, you would not be ready for what is coming. You would question yourself. You would overextend. You would compromise boundaries. But now, you stand lighter, quieter, more aware. This is the part many people misunderstand. God doesn't isolate you to leave you alone forever. He isolates you to introduce you properly, to yourself, to Him, to your assignment. And once that work is done, He reconnects you. Not to the same people, but to aligned people, purpose-driven people, peace-protecting people, people who don't need you to shrink to feel secure. So stop grieving what God already released. Stop questioning what He already removed. You didn't lose anything valuable to your destiny. Everything that left had already finished its assignment, and now that the removal phase is complete, something else has already happened, something you didn't see, something heaven recorded quietly. In the next part, I'm going to explain the moment God marked you as approved, the moment heaven acknowledged that you were ready. Section 4. The moment heaven marked you as approved. Chosen one, there is a moment in every divine journey that most people never notice. It does not come with thunder. It does not come with applause. There is no announcement, no angelic trumpet, no visible sign that says, "Now you are approved." And that is exactly why it is so powerful. Heaven marked you quietly. While you were still wondering if you were behind, while you were still questioning whether you misunderstood God, while you were still carrying doubt and fatigue in your body, heaven already recorded the result. You passed, and you passed before you felt ready. God never waits for you to feel confident before he confirms you. Confidence often comes later. Approval comes first. Let me explain this carefully because this is where many chosen ones get confused. God's approval is not based on performance, it is based on posture. And your posture during that season spoke louder than your prayers ever did. Heaven watched how you handled disappointment, how you responded when doors stayed closed, how you treated people who misunderstood you, how you spoke when you were frustrated, how you stayed aligned even when your emotions were unstable. And there was a moment, somewhere in the middle of that long season, where something shifted spiritually. You didn't notice it outwardly, but inwardly something settled. You stopped chasing explanations. You stopped begging for signs. You became quieter, more grounded, more selective with your energy. That was not exhaustion, that was surrender. That was the moment heaven leaned in. You see, chosen one, God waits for a specific moment before he marks someone as approved. It's not when they are loud in faith, it's when they become steady in obedience, when they no longer need God to prove himself every day, when they trust him enough to move forward without guarantees. That's when heaven says, "This one is ready." And here's the part that may surprise you. God did not approve you because you never doubted. He approved you because you doubted and still stayed aligned. You questioned, but you didn't quit. You struggled, but you didn't turn bitter. You were tired, but you didn't become reckless. That combination is rare. Heaven saw that you no longer needed external motivation to remain faithful. You weren't serving God for immediate results anymore. You weren't chasing relief. You were anchored. And anchoring is a sign of maturity. This is why approval often comes during silence. God wants to see if you will still walk upright when nobody is affirming you, when there is no visible reward, when it feels like nothing is happening. And you did. You kept choosing integrity. You kept choosing restraint. You kept choosing growth over comfort. And even when your emotions fluctuated, your direction stayed the same. That's when heaven marked you. There was a quiet moment where God said, "They are no longer doing this for outcomes. They are doing this because it is who they are." And when God sees that, promotion becomes safe. Let me tell you something important. God does not promote people who still need to be convinced. He promotes people who are convinced even in silence. That's why you may have felt an inner shift before anything external changed. A sense of calm, a release of urgency, a detachment from proving yourself. Those are not accidents. Those are signs of approval. The Spirit settles before the blessing moves. Chosen one, heaven does not rush visible rewards. It confirms internally first. And once confirmation is sealed, manifestation becomes inevitable. Timing may vary, but reversal does not. Another thing heaven observed was how you handled the waiting after obedience. Many people obey God once and then expect immediate outcomes. But you obeyed and then waited without demanding. You waited without manipulating. You waited without forcing doors. That waiting is sacred. Waiting without bitterness is one of the highest forms of faith, and heaven does not ignore that. You might not realize this, but while you were waiting, God was positioning things beyond your sight. conversations you were not part of, decisions being influenced, situations being rearranged, paths crossing at the right time, and all of that began after approval. This is why the approval comes before the visible change, because once heaven marks you, everything else starts aligning around that decision. And here's another truth that will bring you peace. Once heaven approves you, no human opinion can overturn it, no delay can cancel it, no misunderstanding can block it. Approval from God is not fragile. You don't have to defend it. You don't have to chase validation. You don't have to explain your journey to people who didn't walk it with you. Heaven already signed off. That's why you may have noticed something else. Certain arguments stopped triggering you. Certain people stopped having power over your emotions. Certain fears lost their grip. That's not coincidence. That's authority settling in. Approval brings authority quietly, and authority does not shout. It stands. Chosen one, God does not mark you as approved and then forget about you. Approval is not an ending. It is a transition point. It means heaven trusts you with what comes next. And what comes next is not always immediate celebration. Sometimes there is a short pause, a holding space, a final preparation. Not because God is delaying, but because alignment must be complete. You see, once heaven approves you, it begins protecting you differently. God starts shielding you from distractions you didn't even know were dangerous. He blocks paths that would waste your energy. He removes options that would dilute your focus. That's why some opportunities you expected never materialized. They were not aligned with the approved version of you. Approval refines your options. And this is important. Just because you were approved does not mean everything instantly becomes easy. It means everything becomes intentional. Nothing is wasted anymore. Nothing is random. Every step has weight now. Chosen one, heaven marked you because you proved something, not to God, but to yourself. You proved that you could remain aligned even when it was uncomfortable, that you could remain faithful even when you were unsure, that you could remain grounded even when everything around you felt unstable. And that is rare. Most people need noise to stay motivated. You learned how to stay steady in silence. That is why God trusts you. So if you've been feeling a quiet confidence lately, even without visible proof, don't ignore it. That is not arrogance. That is confirmation settling into your spirit. And now that heaven has marked you, something else is unfolding. Something that explains why this entire journey was worth it. Something that will not only bless you, but shift how others see God's faithfulness through you. In the next part, I'm going to explain God's reaction to your faith. And I promise you, it is not what most people expect. Section 5. God's reaction to your faith will stun you. Chosen one, this is where many people misunderstand God. They expect his reaction to look like instant celebration, public applause, or sudden noise. But God's reaction to your faith is far more deliberate, far more strategic, and far more powerful than that. God does not react emotionally. He responds decisively. While you were enduring quietly, heaven was not debating what to do with you. God was preparing a response that matched the depth of your faith, not the volume of your prayers. And that response is never rushed. It is precise. Let me say this plainly. God was not surprised by your endurance. He was moved by your restraint. You had moments where you could have defended yourself, but you stayed silent. Moments where you could have forced doors, but you waited. Moments where you could have exposed people, but you chose peace. Those moments mattered more than you realize. God's reaction to that kind of faith is not small. Here is what stuns most people. God does not reward faith the way humans expect. He doesn't just give back what was lost. He rearranges your future so that the loss no longer defines you. You expected compensation. God prepared transformation. There is a difference. Compensation replaces. Transformation elevates. God saw that you didn't just want relief. You wanted alignment. You didn't just want things to work out. You wanted to stay right with Him. And when God sees that, His response goes beyond fixing situations. He changes positioning. This is why things may begin to shift suddenly after long silence. Not gradually, not predictably, but decisively. One conversation changes everything. One opportunity opens without struggle. One connection forms effortlessly. One internal realization frees you completely. And you sit there thinking, why now? Because God waits until faith is settled before He moves publicly. God's reaction often includes vindication, but not the kind you imagined. He doesn't always expose those who hurt you. Instead, He elevates you beyond their reach. He doesn't argue on your behalf. He removes you from environments where arguments are necessary. That is a higher form of defense. Chosen one, God is not interested in proving you right. He is interested in positioning you correctly. Another part of God's reaction is restoration, but again, not in the way you expect. God rarely restores things exactly as they were. He restores in upgraded form, with wisdom added, with discernment activated, with boundaries intact. What returns to you will not cost you your peace. That's how you'll know it's from God. You will no longer have to fight for it. You will no longer have to convince anyone. You will no longer have to shrink yourself to keep it. God's reaction removes struggle from the equation. You endured a season where everything felt heavy, where progress felt blocked, where your faith felt quiet. And God watched carefully how you handled powerlessness. Because power reveals character, but so does waiting. God saw that you didn't use pain as an excuse to become cruel. You didn't use delay as permission to compromise. You didn't use confusion as justification to walk away. So now, God reacts by trusting you with more. Let me tell you something sacred. God only entrusts sudden breakthroughs to those who won't idolize them. He only releases abundance to those who won't abandon humility. He only gives influence to those who won't lose compassion. Your season of lack was not about deprivation. It was about proving that your heart wouldn't change once your circumstances did. And you passed. That is why God's reaction includes suddenness. Not to shock you, but to protect you. Gradual elevation invites interference. Sudden elevation silences opposition. People don't get time to adjust to your growth. God moves you quickly into alignment. This is also why God waited until you stopped craving validation. If He had elevated you earlier, you might have needed applause to sustain confidence. Now your confidence is anchored internally. That's dangerous in the best way. Chosen one, God's reaction also includes peace as protection. You will notice that chaos no longer pulls you. Drama no longer excites you. Certain arguments don't even register anymore. That's not emotional numbness. That's authority. When God reacts to faith, He often upgrades discernment. You begin to sense what is off before it harms you. You notice energy shifts. You become selective without being judgmental. That's God saying, I trust you now. You may also notice that some people start treating you differently, not because you changed outwardly, but because something about you feels settled. Calm confidence makes insecure people uncomfortable. Grounded faith exposes performative faith. And God allows that discomfort, not to isolate you, but to separate you naturally. Another stunning part of God's reaction is timing. He does not respond when you are desperate. He responds when you are detached, when your faith no longer hinges on outcomes. That's when blessings become safe. Think about it. You reached a point where you said, God, I trust you even if nothing changes. And heaven said, now everything can change. That's how God works. Your reaction determined His response. And here is the part I want you to really hear. God's reaction is not about rewarding you for suffering. God does not glorify pain. He glorifies perseverance. He honors consistency. He responds to alignment. Pain was the environment. Faith was the decision. So if you're sensing that something is about to move, trust that instinct. It's not anxiety, it's anticipation without desperation. It's awareness, not impatience. God's reaction will feel unreal at first because it contrasts so sharply with what you endured. One season felt stuck, the next moves fluidly. One season required effort, the next flows naturally, and you may even feel strange receiving without struggle. That's normal, that's transition. Don't sabotage ease just because you're used to resistance. Chosen one, let me ground you here. God's reaction is not a finish line. It's a doorway. A doorway into a season where your faith no longer has to be proven through suffering. Your assignment shifts now, from surviving to stewarding, from enduring to leading, from questioning to guiding. And God trusts you with that because you didn't break when it was hard. So when blessings begin to show up differently, don't question your worthiness. Don't downplay it. Don't feel guilty for ease. You earned this season through obedience, not effort. God is not reacting to your perfection. He is responding to your persistence.